The early evenings in our apartment had a kind of warmth I thought could never fade. The golden light from the balcony spilled into the living room, painting everything with a gentle glow. Ayaan would sit on the sofa, laptop balanced on his knees, pretending to work while sneaking glances at me. I loved those glances, small, wordless reminders that I mattered to him. Or at least I believed I did. We had been together for nearly 4 years, and in that time I'd grown certain of two things. He was my safe place, and Sarah, my best friend since college, was my anchor outside the relationship. Between the two of them, I felt surrounded by loyalty. It's almost funny how sure I was. Sarah had been around from the very beginning, movie nights, weekend road trips, even spontaneous midnight coffee runs. She had a way of making every space warmer, brighter. Ayaan liked her too, though I never thought much of it. In fact, I was glad they got along. The three of us had an easy rhythm that made life feel uncomplicated. At least it used to. Lately, the rhythm had changed. It began with small things, Ayaan working later than usual, shrugging it off with vague mentions of deadlines and last-minute calls. He started dressing a bit differently, switching to crisp shirts instead of his usual worn tees, wearing a new cologne I didn't recognize. I noticed, but I told myself relationships evolve, and maybe he was just investing more in himself. Still, there were moments that left me unsettled, like the way he'd tilt his phone away when a notification came in, or how he'd smile faintly at something on the screen, then quickly slip the device back into his pocket if I looked his way. It wasn't enough to accuse him of anything, but it was enough to plant the seed of unease. One Thursday evening, I was folding laundry while he showered. His phone, left on the bed, lit up with a message. I wasn't the type to snoop, but the name caught my attention. Sarah. The preview line was short, just 3 words, but they were strange enough to freeze me mid-fold. Please, wait. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, my hands tightening around a shirt I no longer saw. The words swirled in my head. Wait for what? Why the ellipsis? It could have been nothing, an inside joke, a casual exchange, but something in the timing, in the secrecy of his recent behavior, made my pulse quicken. I told myself I wouldn't jump to conclusions. But that night, lying beside him as his breathing slowed into sleep, I couldn't stop replaying those 3 words over and over. By morning, the golden light from the balcony didn't feel as warm. It felt like the sun was quietly retreating, just as something between us was about to. For days after that message, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Sarah could have been talking about anything. But the mind has a way of magnifying what the heart fears most. Every little change in Ayaan's demeanor became another piece in a puzzle I didn't want to solve. He started spending more time at the office, yet his eyes had the distracted haze of someone whose mind was elsewhere entirely. Conversations that used to flow so easily between us now felt like wading through shallow water, safe on the surface, but with no depth beneath. One evening, I met with Hina, an old friend I trusted implicitly. Over coffee, I told her about the message, about the late nights, about the cologne. She listened without interrupting, then said softly, "Sometimes it's better to be sure before you confront. Watch. Wait. The truth reveals itself, eventually." Her advice didn't ease the unease, but it gave me a direction. I became more observant, quietly noting his patterns, listening for the names that slipped into his sentences, watching for moments that didn't align with his explanations. Then came the moment I couldn't explain away. On a Wednesday afternoon, I left work early due to a canceled meeting. Passing by a small cafe near the office district, I caught sight of them, Ayaan and Sarah, sitting at a corner table. Their heads leaned close, their conversation hushed. Sarah's hand rested briefly on his arm in a way that felt far too intimate to be casual. I froze outside the glass window, hidden from their view by the angle of the sun. My mind scrambled for logic. Maybe they were planning something for my birthday. Maybe it was about work. But the tightness in my chest told me those were excuses, not explanations. When I walked in, pretending surprise, they both looked startled, too startled for a casual meet-up. "We were just catching up," Ayaan said quickly, the words almost tripping over each other. Sarah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The rest of the conversation was polite, but strained, each of us playing our part in a performance none of us believed. That night, as Ayaan showered, I sat on the edge of the bed listening. Over the sound of running water, I heard his voice, low, urgent. He was on the phone. "Just hold on. Please, wait until I can tell them," he said. The same words again, the same hollow space between them. By then, I knew this wasn't coincidence. Something was coming, and whatever it would change everything. By the end of that week, the tension had become unbearable. The unanswered questions pressed against me like a weight I could no longer carry. I had two choices: keep pretending or find out the truth, no matter how much it hurt. On Friday evening, Ayaan mentioned he had a late meeting again. His tone was casual, his eyes avoiding mine. Something in the way he grabbed his jacket without looking back made my decision for me. I waited a few minutes, then slipped out, following at a distance. The streets were quiet, the air heavy with the scent of rain about to fall. I kept far enough behind to avoid being noticed, but close enough to watch him turn into a side street. My stomach knotted when I saw where he stopped, a quiet park dimly lit by old street lamps. And there, already waiting, was Sarah. I stood frozen in the shadows as he approached her. She smiled, not the friendly open smile I knew, but something softer, more private. When he reached her, his hand brushed her cheek in a way that left no room for misunderstanding. My heart pounded in my ears as I stepped closer, the damp grass muffling my footsteps. Their voices floated to me in fragments. "We can't hide forever," Sarah murmured. "I know," Ayaan replied. "Just, please, wait until I can tell them myself." The words hit me like a cold wave. All the late nights, the messages, the hurried explanations, they weren't fragments anymore. They fit together now, forming a picture I wished I could unsee. I stepped into the light. "Tell me what, exactly?" The way they both turned toward me, Sarah's face paling, Ayaan's eyes widening, confirmed everything before a single word left their mouths. "It's not what you think," Ayaan began, voice trembling. I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. "It's exactly what I think. You don't meet someone in the dark to talk about the weather." Sarah's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Her gaze fell to the ground, as if it might swallow her whole. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to the three of us standing there in that dim park, the silence between us louder than any scream. My hands shook, not from the chill in the air, but from the raw, unfiltered betrayal coursing through me. "I trusted you," I said, finally, each word sharp as glass. Ayaan took a step toward me, desperation in his voice. "Please wait. I can explain everything." But I was already turning away, because sometimes the explanation hurts worse than the truth you've already seen. I walked away from that park without looking back. The night air bit at my skin, but it was nothing compared to the cold I felt inside. Each step felt heavier, as if the weight of what I had just witnessed was trying to drag me into the ground. I didn't cry, not yet. The shock was still too thick, a numbing shield against the pain waiting to break through. When I reached home, I locked the door and sat in the dark. My phone buzzed repeatedly, Ayaan's name lighting up the screen over and over. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't shatter me further. The messages poured in through the night. Apologies. Please. Promises that it was a mistake and that he never meant to hurt me. But the truth is, betrayal isn't an accident. It's a choice made over and over until it's discovered. Sarah never reached out. Not once. Her silence said more than any explanation could. It told me she wasn't sorry enough to face me, and maybe that was for the best. Days blurred into one another. I moved through them mechanically, going to work, eating when I remembered, lying awake long after midnight. But in the stillness, I began to see something I hadn't before. I was free, not in the joyful sense, not yet, but in the sense that I was no longer tethered to a love that had turned into a shadow. One evening, I wrote Ayaan a single message. There's nothing left to wait for. Then I blocked his number. It was the cleanest cut I could make, And even though it hurt, it was the first real step toward healing. I started filling my days with things I had neglected, painting long walks by the river, afternoons with my family. Slowly, the sharp edges of the memory began to dull. The pain didn't disappear, but it no longer controlled me. Looking back now, I see that the moment in the park was more than just the end of a relationship. It was the unveiling of a truth I had ignored for too long, that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild, and that waiting for someone to value you is a slow kind of self-destruction. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. When someone asks you to please wait while they betray you, they're not asking for time, they're asking for permission to keep hurting you. And you don't owe them that. Would I go back if I could? No. I'd still walk away. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave before the explanation.